Here we go. Welcome to episode 130 of Nothing to Say, the Fans Podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you've been a follower of the show, then you'll recognize the voice. And I only say the voice because this is the first time we've had him on the video portion of the podcast. And that is our old friend, Josh Carson. He decided to join us to talk about the NBA. So, Josh, thank you for coming on. We really do appreciate it.
I appreciate being here. Hopefully everybody enjoys the view of the majestic mountains I got in my background here. And, it's lovly.
Yeah, where are you right now? We need a backstory.
Off the grid, Jason Bourne. Not just kidding. Somewhere in the hills of El Dorado here, coming back from work.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we just locked in this interview this time with Josh, so we're really using off all of our time, using up this opportunity.
Josh is a busy man. Give everybody a quick rundown, because I know for people who listen to the show, we do have a lot of people who went to school with us. So right now, just give us a quick 1 or 2 minute rundown of kind of what you're doing and where you're at right now.
Yeah, for sure. So the past, let's see here, graduated from university in 2021 spring. So yeah, just about a year, because Jessup's coming up on their graduation again. So got out of there and then took a summer, did the multiple part-time jobs thing, like I'm sure a lot of listeners know how that goes. And after that, worked for a local production company for about 7 months. I did a lot of cool jobs on that. It was lighting, audio, staging, stuff that I've really not done a lot in my life. Big learning curve, but some solid dudes there, and that was a good experience. Got to travel a lot. We did Space Needle for New Year's Eve. That was really cool. Tough at the same time, snowing like crazy. Sam up there in Washington probably experienced that a little bit. They say it was supposed to rain a lot. We got a lot of snow, and so it was something out of the ordinary in my life, but definitely enjoyed it. And then recently, I've been on for about a little over a month now. As a video editor for Max Preps. If you've heard of, fan of sports, played high school sports, possibly you've heard of Max Preps. They're America's leader in high school sports. They're owned by CBS Sports. So some cool connections there. And just going in, working from home a lot. That's a cool thing. Saving gas because the prices are wild. But occasionally going into the office is a great office space, and we cover stories, top teams, top players nationally, and throwing together video and just getting it out to all the social platforms for Max Preps.
Well, see, for those of you who may not know Josh like we do, before he got that big old job, which is awesome that you're doing that, by the way. I know that at least the three of us had spent plenty of time on Max Preps in high school, looking at others' team stats or our stats or anything in that nature. Josh also years ago started a YouTube channel that eventually gained a lot of ground and became a much bigger channel as time went on. When was the last time that you are you still active on that? I hadn't checked recently. I've been, for the most part, keeping up, but it's been a minute since I've gone to your channel. Yeah,
well, no, I appreciate it. And it's been a minute since I've posted on there as well. I believe December was the last time I posted. The job that I do now really encompasses everything I was doing on YouTube, plus a couple more things. So once the week is over and I've put in the hours, I'm looking to have some time off from it. But hopefully soon I can find out some type of strategic way to get myself back on there, even if it's not as consistent as before, because, there's still some things that I'd like to cover. But no, it's been a while since I've been on there. But no, I mean, to everyone, even young listeners, it's a great asset. If you can build up a channel, or even what you guys are doing now, kind of building up your own platform, you can do it over years so you can showcase your work. I mean, if I didn't have that channel, there's no way that I have the job that I have now. So definitely take advantage of that and just continue to work on your craft.
Yeah, just log it away in your portfolio, something that'll come back.
Yeah.
I've used it plenty of times during job interviews. So,
yep.
All right. Well,
you used your appearance on the slam dunk competitions for JC3 in your interview.
I should have.
Is that what it was?
I should have.
Oh, yeah.
Provide a link down there to those videos.
Yeah, Jason and I, our eighth grade dunk contest is actually the video that won him over and said, that's the one that we need to hire you because of that right there. So,
wait, you're telling me this guy is better than what he is right now? Oh, sign me up.
Oh, man. Well, we've got a lot to get to in a very short amount of time. I've got 2 questions for Josh about the NBA playoffs. Sam has got 2 questions as well. I'll start us off, and I'll start us right with, I guess, the biggest series through round 1, which is the one that ended the quickest, which was the Boston-New York series. Boston ends up sweeping the Nets. That final game 4 was 116 to 112. So the question that I have for you, Josh, is what do you think that series headline should be? Was it more of the Nets not being good enough maybe to win that series, or was it just Boston is that good? Which storyline do you think was more appropriate for that series?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, obviously, the blame scales and everything has already been put out there for Brooklyn just because they have the big name players in Kyrie and KD. But ultimately, I think the headline should be that Boston is that good. I mean, they've been playing consistently this well since that mark. I believe it was in January where they turned it around. The energy is about to change, or whatever the statement was from Jaylen Brown, and they've been playing great ever since. The interesting parts that I've really picked up from the series is Ime Udoka, I believe, is the coach for Boston. He was an assistant for Brooklyn last year, and this was some of the best defense as a whole total team that I've seen played in a while. His defensive scheme, not only against Kevin, but against Kyrie, they really were able to neutralize those star players for the Nets. And you don't really see, especially Kevin, you don't really see him have a performance like that. I mean, you have to go back all the way till I believe it was 2013, maybe even 14, when they were playing. He was on OKC and they were playing Memphis, and Tony Allen was guarding him. It's probably the biggest challenge that he's had since then, because he's such an effortless scorer and he can rise up over the defense. But there were certain ways that they were guarding, such as, just to get into it really quick, they'd post them up on a wing and he'd try to back down and then face up for his jumper. And the certain ways that Tatum would get in him, he would not allow him to rip through. He would not allow him to get into his dribble pull-up cadence. They'd always bring a second guy, shadow help. So, like, defensive schemes like that were great. Obviously, as great of a player Durant is, he's not going to be shut out every single game. So in game 4, he did what he did. But the main point out of that is that Boston is that good. They're defensively great. And not only are they just a scrappy, great defensive team, they have stars in that team. Jason Tatum is a bona fide star, and so is Jaylen Brown. And Tatum is very skilled as a wing. I think Boston can really make some noise, especially if they go into a round seemingly with the Bucks and Chris Middleton's not there. It'd be interesting to see how they guard Giannis. I didn't think anybody could stop KD, and while they didn't, they did a great job of containing him in a lot of games. Let's see if they can do that against Giannis. And then, finally with them, it was the closest sweep that we've seen, though, in a while. Like,
yes.
Brooklyn was one guy away who was sitting on the bench wearing purple and orange, who needed to stop who needed to stop about 6 to 8 Boston points. And that series could have been completely flipped around. As good as Boston is, and as dysfunctional of a team as Brooklyn is, due to the lack of players being able to play with each other this season, COVID stuff, like injuries, whatever the case may be, no excuses at the end of the day. Like, Boston was a better team, but there was a lot of factors that went into it, and they capitalized, man. They're a really good team. It'd be interesting to see what they do.
I'm glad that you said that it was more about Boston being that good, because that was honestly the takeaway that I had from that series. I know that, you had mentioned, Brooklyn's struggles and all of that, but yeah, the thing that I took away was the same thing that you did in terms of their defense. I mean, their defense was just, it's not I hate to say it, but it's not defense that you see in everyday games in the NBA. And it because of that, it stood out. When you have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart as your, 3 guards, just guarding all of your best players, then that's a tough matchup. And Jason Tatum has turned himself, into I agree with you. A superstar, not just on offense, but on defense as well. He was guarding Durant a lot that series, and he played a big part in just forcing Durant to be uncomfortable and not look like himself. Um, I agree with you. I do think that the Celtics, especially if they do get Milwaukee with Chris Middleton being out, I think that's a favorable matchup for Boston, especially coming off of this series. Um, and the one thing that I have about Brooklyn, and it was one of those things where you could excuse the first year because Durant was injured. Last year, there was a lot of, again, moving parts. This year, especially, I think it looks worse now that they've gotten into the playoffs, because I think this actually would have been a good playoff for them to make a push. One, because LeBron's out. Two, because in the Eastern Conference, the 76ers, they're not that great. And even if they were that great, Joel Embiid just tore a ligament in his hand, I believe. So he's going to be affected. So that's another big team right there. Devin Booker has a hamstring. Hamstrings kind of linger, so who knows how he's going to be. And then also the Chris Middleton thing. So you have all of these big teams who have these little injuries. So if there was ever a year for Boston to make that push, I feel like it would have been this year, and it kind of makes it worse to me in that. In now hindsight being 2020, but still. Sam, what were your thoughts on this series? What were your biggest takeaways?
Yeah, I think you gotta give it. I think Boston was able to really highlight the shortcomings of Brooklyn, whether it be. I don't think we've ever seen a team with a healthy Kyrie and a healthy KD really get dominated on the defensive end, or really have so many hardships and obstacles going into scoring as the way that Boston was able to pose for them. I think that goes to personnel, their ability to have the defensive player of the year, have Jaylen Brown, who's a willing and good defender, have Jason Tatum, who's got that length, and maybe one of five guys that can kind of match up defensively against Kevin Durant and really give him some trouble. But not even that. They were able to throw out Al Horford and Tice and Williams and all these different guys that seemingly were able to put up. Pritchard even got moments to shine in this series. I think they were able to, whatever person they were able to throw in there was able to buy into that defensive mentality, and it was just great team defense. But we can't give Brooklyn the benefit of the doubt here. I think Josh, when you said it was like 6 or 7 points, right, that could have swung this series, and this series could still be going on if 6 or 7 points went a different way. I think that kind of goes to show a little bit of Kyrie's and Kevin's inability to take that game over as maybe the two only superstars in this league going into this series. The two of the superstars in this series, how they weren't able to jump up to the challenge and show up and really take games over and win those games for those teams. Yeah, the defense was crazy good, but they're two of the best offensive players in the league. I think that's got to be definitely said.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll say quick, like they are the main guys, so ultimately that burden or whatever blame is going to fall on them, and some of it is deserved. I mean, Durant did have 16 points in game 3, and he I think went 0 for 10 in the second half of game 2. So there were moments that he wasn't at his best. I think ultimately though, like at the end of the day, they, especially in games 3 and 4, which I watched in almost in entirety in both of those, they could not cut that gap below 4 points. It was like 4 to 10 points. So it doesn't matter how much they were scoring, they could not get a stop or a string together stops to where they could retake the lead. And so what that shows me is that one team is just simply better than the other. They're able to get the stops when they needed to and continue to score. Those guys didn't have the stops. So Boston has a better overall team. They're 3-4 deep. Brooklyn is a 2-man show. I think that's why I think next year is the real test, because you would have thought it would have been this year. Kyrie's out most of the year by his choice. Harden essentially decides to quit on the team in the middle of the year and move on. They bring in a guy for him who doesn't play. And so it's like, again, it's not making excuses for them, but next year, if they were to do the same thing, you can't have this conversation. Like at that point, you almost have to break the team up or fire the coach or whatever. And I like Steve Nash, but man, he did not I mean, he did not respond to any of the defensive schemes or any of the game plan from the Celtics' first year head coach, and especially after Udoka was an assistant under Nash last year. Like, I don't know, that's a tough to swallow. I know Nash. I really like Nash. I liked his style of play, and like I think he's a great coach for these guys. But I don't know. At the end of the day, like this next year will be the true test for them. You just got to hope, if you're a fan of that team, that they can keep their guys healthy and you know, get Simmons playing, or figure out what is going on with him. So
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if you guys heard the comments after the game from Kyrie and Kevin Durant, but I mean, and we don't have to get into them, but some of the comments from Kyrie after the fact were just infuriating as somebody who watches the NBA. But we can
yeah,
dive down that.
that's nothing new. We don't have to go down the rabbit trail. It's
Yeah,
nothing new from Kyrie. He's
yeah,
always
we
going to say
can.
stuff that is like a little bit off. I'm like, what? But you know, anyway,
Yeah.
he's a supreme talent. Like, he's so
yeah.
fun to watch. He's out there with some of his responses for sure.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, that'll close the book on maybe what some people thought was going to be the most interesting series in the first round, and maybe it was for different reasons other than being over. I mean, it was competitive, but I mean, it was a competitive sweep, which is kind of a. I mean, I don't know any other way to put it.
But anyway,
all right,
I know next year I'm not predicting Lakers Nets. I'm just going to say that.
I wouldn't either. I wouldn't either. But I mean, that's about as big of an oxymoron as you could have. So, all right, Sam, you're up.
Okay, so I think it's time. Let's keep it still in the East here. I think it's time to talk about Giannis, because I think his evolution has been super interesting. Where do you think the biggest transition he's made in his game, from almost going from a traditional playoff flameout over his career to now one of the most sure things in the playoffs you can count on?
Yeah, I had this kind of undying trust in him, because he has a factor that you can't teach it. It's just almost something that he's grown up with, and it's simply the fact that he doesn't care what people think of him. Like, such the sharp contrast last year between him and Ben Simmons, right? Like, Giannis, the prime example is when Ben Simmons is in that Game 7 against the Hawks, and he passes up that wide open layup, right? The moment that everybody talked about, and then he eventually decides not to play this year. Between that and his response versus Giannis when he's in the playoffs last year and missing free throw after free throw in the series against the Hawks, and then somehow turning it around and making almost every free throw in the finals. The ability that this guy has. There was a clip that came out of Giannis too. I believe he's talking to PJ Tucker at a practice, where he said, I've airballed like game-winning shots. Like, I've airballed free throws. Like, I don't care. I just continue to get better. He literally does continue to get better. And I think that's why this next series will be so interesting, because years ago, the Bucks played the Celtics. I believe it was 2018 or 19 in the playoffs. And the Celtics won Game 1 by establishing a wall of defenders on the fast break. They were able to slow him down. The Bucks came back and ended up winning that series, but I don't think there's any one strategy you can put on him anymore, because he is about as physically dominant as any of these, big centers that you've seen in the league before. But yet he can run the floor and handle so well. I think his passing has gotten better. I think he has the ability to make a mid-range jump shot, maybe a little one-legged pull-up jump shot. He can occasionally hit a three, and if he's somewhat reliable, if he's like 70 to 80% from the free throw line, there's really not more you can ask. And so what he's going to consistently do makes him so dangerous offensively is he's going to draw in a bunch of defenders, and that team is primed for that, because he'll kick out to Grayson Allen or whoever else is on the wing. And if they can knock down threes, then that team can be successful. So I think his ability, two factors, his undying ability to say, I just don't care what anybody thinks. I don't care if I fail. I'm going to continue to get better. And then actually putting in that work and getting better, which we've seen the results of, like that's the reason why he's the player he is.
Yeah, I think it's so astonishing. The stark contrast even between him in his first 5 years to him in the last 2 years, I think, is so crazy different. I almost put him now on the level of a LeBron in the playoffs, where you can noticeably see he can flip that switch in almost take over the game, where he's controlling the game and the flow of the game that only a few guys have, and it's like effortless against a good Chicago team. And Chicago was one of the best teams in the East for this pretty much this whole year, and he's doing this without Chris Middleton. Granted, with a great supporting cast around him that's playing really well in this series, and that's a huge part of it. But he is, it's like nothing, no one can stop him. I don't even know if Boston can stop him with how well he's playing.
Well, I mean, I don't know, and I guess I go back to what Josh you said earlier about not knowing if there's necessarily one strategy that you could use anymore to stop Giannis. I would have said the same thing about Kevin Durant, and we saw what happened last series. Granted, they're two different players, and I think one thing that Boston is going to have to account for with Giannis that they didn't have to with Kyrie is that Giannis is going to be much more physically dominating than Kevin Durant is. Like Durant will sit back, cross you up, and just hit one in your face. Giannis will drive and dunk on your face. And there's a different style of defense that you kind of have to account for with that instead. Um, so, but I mean, like I said, I would have said the same thing about Durant, and they ended up sweeping the Nets. I think Milwaukee is top to bottom a better team. It's going to be interesting if Middleton doesn't come back. That, I mean, I feel like
How
if he
long is
doesn't come back,
Middleton
that's going
out
to
for? Do
be.
we know?
I think it was a 2 to 4 week injury. That was the last that I had heard, but I don't know if
Is
he
he
is.
is he already
I mean,
determined to be out for
I
this
can
series?
check. I can check real quick, but I know the last that I had heard from ESPN was that his supposed injury was usually a 2 to 4 week thing. And I'm reading right here from Woj. It says right here, Chris Middleton's knee is expected to miss at least 2 weeks. Yeah, that's from Woj. So, I mean, we'll see. So it might bleed over into this series with Boston, assuming that they. Okay, well, as we're filming, they just beat Chicago. So,
There you go.
there you have it. So there you have it. So Milwaukee versus Boston, which wow, that's going to be a great series.
Yeah. With how well Drew Holiday's playing, I think that definitely tightens it up a little bit.
Well, even Grayson Allen has had major moments for the Bucks this postseason, especially in Game 4. I think it was 4 that he played really well. So, all right, well, so I'll keep that in mind with Giannis. And I had a question about the Celtics, so I'll tie those two in with this question. Perhaps the most competitive from top to bottom series so far, which I don't know if anybody was expecting heading in to the playoffs, has been the Grizzlies and the Timberwolves. And that has been a matchup between Ja Morant and Anthony Edwards. So the question that I have for you, I had said, I think it was last week, that Ja Morant and Anthony Edwards might be the most entertaining rivalry going forward in the NBA. The question that I would have for you is, and the only reason why I'm thinking of this is because I think we forget sometimes how young Giannis is. Giannis is only 27, and Jason Tatum, I think, is like 25. So they're both really young. So my question to you is, what do you think is going to be a better rivalry going forward in the NBA? Is it going to be Ja versus Anthony Edwards, or Jason Tatum and the Celtics versus Giannis and the Bucks?
Wow, that is a really tough question. Yeah, Tatum. Let's see, Tatum was, I believe, 2017 or 18. Tatum might be 23 or 24. I don't know. There's, man, both of these have an expectancy, a very long shelf life ahead of them. I mean, obviously, Ja and Anthony Edwards could be even longer. It's just good to see. Like, I'm glad to see Minnesota is finally doing something. I mean, they're blowing a lot of leads. Okay, let's get that straight. They're blowing a lot of leads. I mean, it is a young team. I understand it. So is Memphis, but yeah, I mean, at least they're finally there. I mean, a team with so many top picks. I mean, Towns #1, D'Lo #2, Edwards #1. Like, they got so many top picks on that team. It was about time that they got out of the cellar. But man, better rivalry going forward. I mean, I think ultimately the players who are will probably go down as greater and more dominant players. I mean, Giannis is going to be one of the most dominant players ever. So I like that matchup and those teams in the East a bit more. But man, for a different type of guard, I mean, guard rivalry, yeah. I mean, Anthony Edwards and Morant is definitely proved it's going to be great for years to come here.
I mean, you talk about two of the most explosive young players in the league, and they're in the same series, right? It has been so fun. I had up until last year, my favorite dunk that I had ever seen in an NBA game was the famous CP3 lob to DeAndre Jordan. And then last year, Anthony Edwards' baseline dunk became my favorite one I had ever seen. And then just yesterday, John Morant's poster down the middle of the lane was one of those ones where I was like, okay, well, throw that into the question now too. So I mean, and it's funny to me I guess anatomy of both of them, because John Morant is kind of this slender guard. He's really shifty, but he attacks so aggressively. And Anthony Edwards is built like a freaking football player. And it's just an interesting dynamic between those two. And yeah, with the Tatum and Giannis thing, I mean, I think you're right. I think they're going to go down as greater all time in terms of the spectrum. But I was thinking about I feel like this playoffs has been kind of a platform for a couple of young players to really show who they are. I mean, Anthony Edwards, John Morant, and Brandon Ingram has showed up as like he's emerging as like a superstar in the league. And then you have even Tyrese Maxey is playing really well. I don't know what he's going to end up being. And then Jordan Poole has played really well. And it's just all these guys who are really young and playing really well. And I think that's a really good thing for the NBA. I know, Sam, you and I, we had an episode a couple of weeks ago talking about how there's a changing of the guard in like all of sports right now between LeBron and Federer and Tiger and Brady. And so the NBA is in a good place with their young stars right now.
Yeah, I'm most impressed going off of that with Jason Tatum and because it almost seemed like they had that run early in his career. I think it was his first or second year where they made it to the conference finals against LeBron, ended up losing, but had like a great run. And it almost seemed like he plateaued a little bit, where we don't really hear about Jason Tatum, but now it's like he's gone to a completely different level. Going back to just that Brooklyn series, every answer is either him or Jaylen Brown answering any run that those guys, and that's, I think, the biggest thing for any player to really take that next step.
Yeah, Tatum, he's definitely stepped his game up from a defensive point of view, but the reason why he's not just like this great young player that people think is like, yeah, he's good, but he's not in the conversation. He's in the conversation now because he's a playmaker as well. I mean, so many plays, Grant Williams corner threes, like he was just making plays for his teammates all over the place. And so when you get to that type of level where he's not just a scorer, like he's not somebody who's going to score, maybe like 20 points and have, 2 assists, 1 rebound. Like he's going to fill the stat sheet. So, and do it in a consistent rate too. And so now he's really improved. That was their first year that they went to the conference finals, and it's tough. I mean, like you're talking beforehand, like on this about the 10-year-old who's getting all these hole-in-ones. It's like you set the standard so high for yourself so early on. Everybody's gonna anything less of that, less than a conference finals, less than getting so much better. It's tough too, especially for such a young player. Which I think the expectations on these young guys nowadays is like sky high. So the fact that Anthony Edwards is in his second year, John Morant's in his third year, like doing what they're doing is really impressive because, I mean, it's a microwave society. They expect you to perform right away. Kobe Bryant was one of the greatest players ever, and like the first couple of years, he rode the bench. You know what I mean? So some guys need time, and some of these guys are coming out and they're like really good right away. It's a testament to they're playing a lot more now. There's certain elite circuits that these guys can play in all the way from high school level and play nothing but one sport. It wasn't like that back in the day. So guys are progressing a lot sooner, and you're totally right, Jason. Like league is in a great place. The LeBrons, the KDs are still going to be there for a couple more years. But LeBron for a couple more years, Durant maybe 5 to 8 more years, who knows? But no, I mean, once you pass the guard off, like there's no dip in the level of play for sure.
Yeah, I mean, how many young, legit like superstars do you think we could name just off the top of our heads right now? I mean, I mean, what? So let's just quickly rattle off some names like Booker, Tatum, Ingram. Um,
Luca is a big one.
Yeah,
Luka is a big one.
Giannis.
Yep.
yeah.
Um,
Donovan Mitchell when he leaves, you know.
Donovan Mitchell when he leaves.
uh, but he's another one where it's like he
Trae
had
Young.
such an impressive first. Yeah, Trae Young too. And like, man, you can't knock Trae Young. He had a quote in the series where it's like, I haven't been guarded like this since high school, right?
Yes.
They were throwing like freaking, I think they were throwing box and ones at him and like doubles and traps. And like, he was so impressive last postseason with what he was able to do, you know? And it's like, you just didn't think the Hawks were going to make it back to the conference finals again, right? Like they were able to make such an impressive run. And it just shows you like, once you have your opportunity, you really got to capitalize on it because it's not guaranteed it's going to come around again right away. And you know, it just shows that hey, like these teams, they keep the core. Like Atlanta kind of kept their core, but they didn't really add any additional pieces. You know, they didn't really reload and add. So it's going to be tough for a team like that because um, the Eastern Conference is like it's crazy how it's grown. You know, just like in the middle of the 2010s, we're talking about, oh, do we need to have a 16-team playoff, whatever. And now it's like the Eastern Conference might be better because there's like 3 or 4 teams that can come out of that conference. So, you know, it just takes time.
Josh, did you turn your video off?
No, I'm just there's a call going through, so I should be good.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there we go. We lost him for a second. All right, we back. All right. Well, I mean, I think we all can agree, like we said, yeah, the NBA is in just a great place with their young superstars, and it'll be really fun to see going forward how all of these series shake out, but also these teams going forward. And if you are watching us, that graphic of Josh, it's very nicely put together. I have to say, the Wilson basketball right there, the logo, it's well put together.
Well, there you go. Hope you enjoy that.
All right, Sam, what's your last question?
So this is a good jumping off point because we're going to talk about one of those young stars in his team, and probably the I want to say worst series, but probably the series that no one's talking about in Utah v Dallas. Josh, what do you make of the Mavs? Now with Jalen Brunson really emerging as the clear running mate to Luka. Luka came back healthy, looked really good in that game 5 win. Do you think they pose a threat to the elite of the West, the Phoenixes, the Golden States, the Memphises? Or is this just the Jazz making the Mavs kind of look better than what we thought?
Probably a little bit of both. I mean,
that's not an answer. We can't take that one.
The Jazz make everybody look better, man. It's so disappointing. But I mean, Dallas like has every year it matters the certain situation that you find yourself in because they have a good opportunity. If Booker is coming back from this hamstring, if he's not able to be 100%, which a hamstring, like you just don't heal it in a couple of weeks. I mean, James Harden had the hamstring injury last postseason, and he was a shell of himself for the rest of that series, the game like 5 through 7 that he played in. So I wouldn't expect Booker to come back and just be dropping 30 again like he was before. So Dallas has a very unique opportunity, especially seeing what New Orleans has done, though the Pelicans may not win the series, being able to kind of test and push Phoenix. Dallas has a opportunity to actually take the next series against Phoenix and make the West Finals. But to me, that doesn't show me that they're a West Finals every year capable team. I mean, their roster is just not built for that. They have solid players, but they really don't have a true number 2 next to Luka, though Jalen Brunson is doing all he can to emerge as that. They're going to need another name there to help him out.
I don't know, Josh. He looks pretty good. Brunson is looking pretty good this year. In all the time that Luka's been out, he's been carrying that team in the workload.
Yeah, and I mean, credit goes to him. I don't think he's a number 2 option on a championship team, right? If that's the ultimate goal, like Jalen Brunson won't be your number 2 option. Plus, not to take anything away from them, but I mean, Stephen A did say about Utah, what will go wrong does. And that's basically what happens with them every year. It's very disappointing. They reminded me of the Clippers from the mid 2010s, and like it's time to eventually break that team apart because they're just not going to get anywhere with it. It's unfortunate, but playing Gobert can make a defensive liability, and offensively, man, if your center, if your bigs, they can't shoot anymore, or if you can't shoot free throws like you saw in the Brooklyn series of Nick Claxton missing so many free throws, it's just a liability on the court. Like the game has changed. You can't play the old Doc Rivers style with two bigs. And now you see what happened to Philly. We'll see what happens with them. They could blow 4 in a row. I mean, I would not be surprised if Doc Rivers lost 4 games in a row. Sorry to go on a tangent there, but all is that to say is that, yeah, Mavericks have a chance to make some noise this year, take advantage of some things, kind of like Atlanta did last year, right? They got a similar team overall, but I don't see them overall being able to complete it if they don't, unlike Atlanta. They kept the same unit, but they didn't, add pieces that could make them that better, much better of a team. So Dallas is gonna have to do that in the offseason. So we'll see.
Jalen Brunson watches the show, so he's gonna, I imagine, talk to you after this is over, or at least after it airs. So.
Oh, you've heard from him before?
No.
I was about to say. I mean, it's good player. I mean, I'm a fan. I don't think he's number 2. Like,
no, I'm kidding.
He should think he's a number 2, but I don't think he is.
I've been thoroughly impressed with his play and Spencer Dinwiddie's play because they've been searching for someone to really handle the ball. This is what they wanted Porzingis to really do and fill that void. And I think they got 2 guys that are playing at the best level they've ever played in their career, and it seems to be working.
Yeah. Something that matters ultimately at the end of the day is if the guys don't lack confidence, and that's the type of guys that you want on your team. They can not lack confidence and come through, right? Some guys, they think they may be better than they actually are. These guys, they don't lack confidence and they're able to come through in moments. So those are the type of guys you want on your team. Put one other star next to Luka, and you can have a legitimate team there if you're able to keep Brunson and Dinwiddie.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do think that if they are going to make a legitimate title push, then they do need at least one more piece, and that's probably going to be in the form of, a 4 or a 5. I don't know who is going to be on the market next season. I don't even know if they're going to be in the market next season, but I think they do need a big to complement Luka for sure. For sure.
Hey, we all thought Chris Middleton was in championship winning number 2. They proved us wrong last year.
Chris Middleton and Pascal Siakam to me are like the same player in that sense. When Kawhi won that championship with Pascal and Giannis with Chris, I feel like I can't separate those two in my head. They're so similar with how they play, and they're both so talented.
Yeah. Each of those teams had a formula though. Like you had a really good 3 or 4, whatever you want to call it, Kawhi, Giannis, that position that they play. Got a good point guard who's making shots, playing good defense, Van Vliet, Holiday, and then you have a shooting guard or, whatever Siakam was, a shooting guard or small forward, get you some buckets, play some good defense. But that's it. That's the thing. Like you got 3 solid players, kind of a big 3, if you will. And so I don't know. Is Spencer Dinwiddie, Jalen Brunson, and Luka a big 3? I don't know. You tell me. Sam thinks so. I don't know if that's a championship big 3.
Buckets.
Yeah,
I'm gonna sneak one more question into this at the end. Are the Warriors the best team in the playoffs right now?
Yes, I believe so. They have a fully healthy team, and that's the main thing. Like literally, just give me the team who's healthiest at the end of the day, and that team could win the championship. That's what happened last year with the Bucks. Not to take anything away from any other team, but they're able to keep themselves healthy, though they had scares here and there. Like that's what matters. Like you're healthy and you're playing well as a unit. We really haven't seen. I feel like we've gone the whole year, and I haven't seen this Warriors team. And that's like the scary part for everybody else, because like there's really no way you can defensively scheme for them. They got so many weapons, so many shooters. They play good defense. You have Draymond, who's an engine, who's able to make plays, play defense. I mean, I don't know, like space the floor. This is a very scary team. This reminds me a lot more of their team before Durant, better than that team though. I'd say the main thing when they got Durant, yes, they got better as a team, but they lost a lot of depth because they had a bunch of max players, and you can't have depth when you have to pay all these guys. So now they have their depth back, and they're able to do it too because guys like Poole, they're not paying an exorbitant amount of money. He eventually will get that, but he's been able to on this rookie deal or whatever he's on, get better every single year and be a legitimate player. And because of the injury to Clay, he's had more time, and injury to Steph, he's had more time, and he's just stepped up in that role. So, my finals bracket, I have them in the Bucks, and I have the Warriors winning that in 7 games. So
Wow.
we'll see. I mean, like they look like they could be the best team right now. I thought Phoenix would really be the main challenge for them, but the health of Booker is everything. It really is everything. And if he's not going to be able to be 100%, I don't think they can beat them in a 7-game series.
Yeah. Well, as we're recording this right now, the Warriors and the Nuggets have tipped off for Game 5. It is currently 8-5. So there you go. Breaking news. Breaking news. Sam, you got any last-minute burning questions?
No, not really. I think Josh definitely answered a lot. We appreciate you coming on, Josh. That was awesome. Giving us some of your basketball knowledge. I know every time we've had you on, they've been good shows, good episodes about basketball. So just really appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you guys. Good to see your faces, talk to you again.
Be careful back there. This looks like there's a truck that's stopping.
Oh yeah, there is a truck in the back.
Back there in the background.
Nothing back there.
So no, it's over your left shoulder. It's on your left shoulder. Yeah.
He's taking pictures of his truck for the gram or something.
For the gram.
He's stopping. He's taking pictures. He's trying to sell it. Oh, dude. It's a pretty majestic background. I don't blame him.
Oh, man. That's a perfect note to end it on. I'm taking pictures of trucks for the gram. I like it.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, man. All right. Well, Josh, as always, again, like Sam said, thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. I'm sure if we can, if we could do this again, either before the NBA Finals or after the NBA Finals, I think that would be really fun. So,
sure, definitely.
Fantastic. All right, man. Well, enjoy wherever you're at, and we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you later.
All right, you guys have a good rest of the show. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Josh.
All right, bye.
I think we should have talked about it with Josh, but we talked about so much. The bus driver, because I think that is super.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We can do that.
Super interesting of how we judge players and how we judge star players. I'm sure everyone that's watching this knows the beef between Chuck, Charles Barkley.
Give people a little backstory because I needed a refresher on it as well.
Right. So during the Brooklyn series, Charles Barkley and Shaq were very critical of Kevin Durant's play because we haven't really seen Kevin Durant play that poorly, and except for 2013, I guess, is when Josh alluded to when Tony Allen and the Grizzlies were giving him problems. We've really never seen it. I think that's definitely a testament to how good of a player he is that we hold him to that high standard. But they were saying that almost discrediting his championship wins and his playoff successes because he wasn't the leader of the bus in Golden State. I think that's been a super big mantra with the whole mega super team that was created and almost giving that asterisk to those championships that he had. And he did win finals MVP for both of those wins. So if that's not being the bus driver, I don't know what is, but they were almost like he wasn't really the driving force almost for those teams. And I don't know does this almost open a door to judge other players and judge other championships? Because I feel like this isn't really super fair for players. Like take Dwayne Wade, for example. Are we only going to say he only has one ring because he was the driving factor for that 2006 Miami ring? And he was carried, quote unquote, by LeBron for 2 rings? Like, what does that say for his legacy type of thing?
I don't know. Maybe it's tough with Durant because I think the optics of the situation are he couldn't win by himself, at least on the surface, he went to a team that had already won the championship without him. He ended up winning 2 championships there, and now he can't win by himself. So I feel like what they're saying, but he's not even by himself right now, which is the thing. But maybe makes it worse. But I don't know. I feel like it's a player to player basis. I mean, Dwayne Wade won one by himself, so he proved that he could do it.
We had Shaq.
They did have Shaq, but they didn't have like LA Shaq.
Yeah,
but they did have it. They did have a pretty good version of Shaq, though. Yeah, and LeBron's won by himself. And at least the one in Cleveland he did, and then the one in LA I think he really needed. But I think the thing with LeBron as well is that maybe he hasn't won. He's been to 10 finals or something like that. He hasn't won all 10, but at least it's something like that. Could be 11. It's either 9, 10, or 11, which is an obscene number.
He's 4 and 6.
Yeah, it's an obscene number, but at least he's gotten them there. And the comparison that I kept hearing this week is that people still talk about the LeBron Dallas series, and that happened 10, 11 years ago. So people are never going to forget this series for Kevin Durant. And my favorite thing that I heard earlier this week was, I don't remember who said it. It came from an analyst on ESPN, but I don't remember. But they were saying that what's going to be even worse for Durant is if Golden State wins this year. Because then it would be like, well, they won without you before you, and then they also won without you after. So did they really need you for the 2 in the middle? Who knows? So he is praying that Golden State does not win this year. And I don't know. I think it's something that you have to do on a player-to-player basis based on their track record and stuff. I think it's a fair argument for Durant because he hasn't had the level of success that somebody like LeBron, who he gets compared to, has had when he, comparatively has had more around him. So although I guess the years with, I feel like the years that LeBron was in Miami could be compared to the years that Durant was in Golden State, and they both won 2. But then LeBron went and won 1 in Cleveland, and then he won 1 in LA. So
I think I don't even think it's more or less like their supporting cast. I think it's their distinction within the league. Kevin Durant, in most people's eyes, is the best player on the planet. He, for a lot of people, maybe as early as 2 years ago, was the best player, but undoubtedly is right now. You could maybe put Giannis there, but I think everyone's putting on a skill level and how well he's played, Kevin Durant is the best player. And to be held to that standard, I mean, if LeBron got swept in the first round, he would get missing the playoffs this year, got eviscerated for it. Getting swept I don't think if LeBron if this LeBron Lakers team were to make the playoffs, I don't think they get swept just because of his brilliance.
I don't think they do.
I think that's a testament to how good of a player he is, and that's the standard that Kevin Durant was really held to this year, and that's why it's such a almost held as like a colossal failure.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd be interested to see how this. I'm going to be interested to see how this beef sort of plays out between Durant and the Countdown guys, because I think it's a fair analysis. I don't think it's fair for every player, but it's a player to player basis thing. Like you can't do it with everybody. But then again, not everybody has the opportunity to get compared to Michael Jordan and LeBron James. So if you're going to be in that air, then it's what's going to happen. It comes with the territory. If you get swept in the first round, then you're going to hear about it for probably the rest of your career.
And I feel like it wasn't really justified. Kevin was like comparing, was bringing up like all the different like great teams, great players that Chuck played on, but he owned it. Charles owned it. It was like, yeah, I was the leader and I didn't win. That's a huge mark against my legacy. And that's what Kevin's going to have to deal with. That was the whole thing. It wasn't like, that's not something that I'm like better than you, or that's not applicable to me. That's directly applicable to me. And he owned it. I don't think that was definitely sort of acknowledged on Kevin's end. It was almost like, dude, why is this guy talking to me when he had to deal with the exact same thing, or when he couldn't get it done with these players?
I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, if you're going to be in that rarefied, if you want to be in that rarefied air with the greats of all time, then you can't get swept in the first round with Kyrie Irving on your team. You just can't. And not only with Kyrie Irving, but Seth Curry, who was a very good player. Gordon Dragic almost won the game. Hell, DeAndre Jordan played some important minutes. Andre Drummond, I'm sorry. Yeah, my bad.
Bruce Brown played really well.
Bruce Brown played really well. I mean, there were enough guys there for them to at least win a game. And if you're Kevin Durant, you can't go out there and go over 10 in the second half of a game or have 16 points in game 3. You can't do it. You cannot do it. So it's red, to quote Black Widow, that's red on the ledger.
Okay.
So come on, that was a good poll. That was a good poll.
Avengers 2012.
That was a good poll.
Or 2011. I can't remember when Avengers came out, but I think are we on the side of the track a little bit?
I think so. Yeah. Good. So, 0.1 for old Chucky.
Sir Charles.
Sir Charles. Yeah. All right. Well, that'll wrap it up for us on episode 130 of Nothing to Say the Fans podcast. Thank you all so much for listening and or watching. Thank you again to Josh for coming on the show. Hopefully, we'll get him on either before or after the NBA Finals. We'll have to figure out which one feels appropriate. I almost feel more inclined to do after. Because I feel like we could get a breakdown of it, but then again, there's, the whole preview thing. Maybe we'll do both. Who knows?
Yeah,
we'll
keep calling him on his way home from work. That's what's going to happen.
Yes, majestic El Dorado Hills.
Hey, can you pull over real quick, Josh? We just got a couple questions for you.
Oh, he's at the gas station. Like, yeah, I'm pumping. Hang on. He's shopping or something.
Yeah.
Oh, man. All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you all next week.
Thanks, everyone.